Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mac and D podcast. How you doing, Jimmy D?
I'm doing great, man. I had a really good weekend, and I'm just ready to talk about some sports and some football.
Yeah, 100%. I was doing a bit of a Space Jam marathon this weekend. Watched the first one and the second one with Jordan and then LeBron. And I was watching a YouTube video about it afterwards. I don't know if a lot of people know this. One of the main things that bring Jimmy and I together is that we both really love movies. And so whenever I was watching this YouTube video, it made me think of the podcast. And whenever they were trying to do a reboot of Space Jam, they were originally trying to do it in the early 2000s, right after the first one came out. And originally they were thinking of doing a Tony Hawk version where it was going to be called Skate Jam. And then they thought about doing a Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon version where it's going to be called Race Jam. I just think that's so funny that they thought about going to different sports. So that
Yeah,
kind of made
I
my
don't know
weekend.
about skate jam, but I'd be in there for a race jam,
Dude, I'd watch them both. I want the whole like cinematic universe of it. So
of course.
some other crazy stuff that came out this weekend. Every single time we do this recent news section, I always think we're going to run out of stuff to talk about, but we always have something new because there's always something going on in the wide world of sports. But the Fernando Tatis suspension went down this past weekend, which is pretty insane. So for anyone who doesn't know, he allegedly took some PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, steroids, and is now out for 80 games. So what's your take on that, James?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate for the Padres, right? Because they just made the blockbuster trade to get Soto. Um, he's a young guy, so it's kind of surprising. You never think of the young dudes using PEDs. It always seems to be older people like post injury. So I think that was maybe there's like a shock factor to it, but at the same time, like it's baseball. People have been juicing up since day one. So some dudes get caught, some don't. That's just kind of all there is to it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting for the Padres. It's lucky that they did the Soto trade, in my opinion, because they can kind of make up for some of that production. But as they go down the stretch, they won't have Tatis in the regular season. They're not going to have him in the postseason if they end up making it, which they likely will. And then they won't have him to start next season. So, like you mentioned, a little strange that a younger guy took them. It's a little strange that a smaller guy also took them. Usually we see them with the bigger sluggers like the Nelson
Yeah.
Cruzes.
I,
Yeah,
I was looking him up really like 6'2", 6'3", 217. So I mean that's not exactly this just mammoth human. I mean that's obviously a big athletic guy, but not anything where you're like, oh, that guy's clearly using PEDs. So yeah, I think it just like I said, it's just kind of shockwaves. Like it just really comes as a surprise when you look at a slender person like that, and definitely someone that isn't coming off an injury. So
Yeah, there's been a lot of speculation now too, and it makes me wonder as well if he was taking them last year whenever he had a big jump in home runs. And then it's also a little funny because he came out and said afterwards with his agent and his lawyer present, saying that he took it because he had ringworm. And there's some drug, some sort of prescription for ringworm that had that name, but it was actually a couple letters off. So the excuse kind of rang hollow after that. I don't know if you saw that like repercussions after the
I
fact.
didn't see that, but man, I hate it when athletes do that. Like, just own up to it. Be like, yeah, I thought I was going to get away with it. Sorry, kids. Like, this is just the way it is.
Yeah,
Because I mean, it's like the same with like D Hop. He kind of apologized, but was like, "Oh, I didn't think it was illegal." Like, whoopsie. And then not too long ago, Julian Edelman was like, "Oh, I thought it was protein. I can't believe there was testosterone in it." It's just like, guys, you're not idiots. Like, clearly, you know what you're taking. I mean, everything that goes into an athlete's body, especially at that level, is just so finely tuned that like the excuses always just feel so empty. And I'd rather them just be like, "Hey, yeah, I thought, this is the path I took. Like, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm gonna do better going forward. I really wish just like one time someone would do it that way."
yeah, especially with like how the injuries shake out and how it's better to be able to take something in order to come back from injury. But like you're saying,
Mhm.
like all these guys have personal chefs. They all have personal doctors. Like they all know what's going into their body because like
Yeah.
that's the asset, right? They're the product, and so they definitely know. And it is pretty funny watching the excuses, watching them try and worm out of it every single time.
Yeah, I think another thing too is just the fact that's like baseball's just better with steroids, so I feel like they should really just lax up the drug standards anyway. Like people go to the ballpark, they want to see the ball fly 500 feet in the air, so why not just let monsters go out there and smash some baseballs around?
You heard it here first. Jimmy D wants to legalize all drugs.
That's
Speaking
right. Let's see what humans can do. Get the PEDs out there.
superhumans. Another person that had an injury and probably wishes they had some steroids going on right now is Zach Wilson. He got injured this past weekend. What was your take on that, James?
Yeah, I was surprised it wasn't hip related or hip flexor, something kind of strained there from extracurriculars, but it was in fact just a knee from playing football. The initial indication was potentially ACL. Dude's done for the season, which you hate to see. But luckily, it's coming out that they're thinking it might be more of a bone bruise, and he's going to be out just for a month of camp and not the regular season. But I think that begs the question: how big of a deal do you think it is, Mac, that a second year player that definitely needs the reps is going to miss an entire training camp?
Yeah, it really honestly sucks, because he needs this time. He's had like the weird timing with like COVID and everything. So sports in general have just been really weird for players that are in this era. He has a lot of new faces as well. He's got Garrett Wilson coming in. He could probably use some more chemistry with Elijah Moore. He also has CJ Azoma coming in at tight end, who we're talking about today. And so, yeah, I really, really hate it for him. I'm not a big Zach Wilson person. I'm not a big Zach Wilson fan. I definitely didn't want to have my Lions picking him very highly whenever they were high up in the draft. But I still want to see the Jets perform. And now they have back-to-back weeks, just major injuries to left tackle and now quarterback. So you really hate to see it just for a football fan standpoint. And it's really just bad luck for the New York Jets all the way around.
Really is, yeah. Bless the knees. Let's get to regular season.
Honestly. Another weird thing that came out this weekend was some preseason games that were going down, so especially with quarterbacks. So the first one that we'll talk about is Kyler Murray. This is one of the most interesting stories that I've seen in a bit, and it just shows how weird of an organization the Arizona Cardinals are. So for anyone that didn't see, basically Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, who is under pretty consistent scrutiny, as well as Kyler Murray, the quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. Cliff basically told Kyler, hey, you're always making fun of my plays. You're always saying that this is a weird play or frowning or just not wanting to call my player do an audible. How about you take the reins of being the play caller for a quarter? So Kyler did exactly that. During the fourth quarter of their preseason game this past week, he became the offensive coordinator. He called all the plays. And then you can see the results of what ended up happening. They went 3-and-out every single time and scored 0 points while we had offensive coordinator Kyler Murray. And honestly, I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, this one was weird, right? So you see it, and it's like you kind of think, at first glance, I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool. It's like a teaching moment of, hey, if you were in control of the playbook, like what are the plays you like? But when you line up what was actually going on underneath, it's like, how much drama can one team endure in a single offseason? And it felt like just a very immature move by Cliff. It's like, dude, I get it that you're getting rid of or a little bit of bad feedback from your quarterback, but man, handle that, quietly or behind closed doors. Like everything public coming out just is really pointing to a ton of dysfunction in Arizona. And that's not a good look when you just signed this guy to $250 million. And it's like, so clearly they're keeping Kyler. Like Cliff, I'd be a little bit concerned, pulling some bush league moves, like your ass might get shipped out of there. So it's just weird all around. It could have been cool. It could have been like, yeah, Kyler wanted to call plays and it's preseason. Who cares? So I let him. But they really made it into like, I wanted to get a gotcha on our quarterback. And it's like, dude, you guys are supposed to be working together. Let's not have some gotcha moments.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I don't know what he really expected out of Kyler either, because like he's a young quarterback. Like, what he doesn't have the command like a Peyton Manning does or a Tom Brady does. Like, he doesn't have that audible capability yet. He's only been in the league for a handful of seasons, so I think it's a little strange. He really set him up to fail, and now it just looks really bad on the organization. But I thought it was pretty damn funny. Another quarterback that performed interestingly this past weekend was Malik Willis, the new quarterback in Tennessee. He's technically the backup right now for Ryan Tannehill. He was a third-round pick out of Liberty. So what was your take on his preseason performance this past weekend?
Well, I think you highlighted it very well. It was an interesting start. I don't know if you can call it a good start, right? So he really showed that he's faster than second and third string players in the NFL, which is good. He showed he has a good feel in the pocket, but he was definitely one read and then tuck and running to the point where even Vrabel took him out in the third quarter and said, "We know he can run. We wanted to see him pass the ball." Um, yeah, it was just kind of weird all around there. But I mean, he had some awesome runs, really ripped off some great plays, showed that athleticism that you just can't teach. And then he even owned up to it too at the end, right? He was saying I ran the ball too much. I wasn't working through my reads, and he kind of showed some maturity around understanding that in preseason you got to work on things and not just rely on your feet. So I would say it's honestly promising for Tennessee Titans Nation. You're kind of like, okay, cool. Like maybe we only have to endure Tannehill one more season, and we can get maybe like a Lamar type player in here, where you just have this athletic ability that you can't coach to kind of take over, especially at a team like that just loves running the ball. Like they got to be just salivating seeing what Malik was able to do, at least in this first game.
Yeah, 100%. His legs look great. I think his arm looked really good too. But kind of like you mentioned, his reads are really off right now, and his timing was really bad as well. Like there's this one pass that I saw where the receiver did a 5-and-out towards the sideline, and his timing was just awful. Like it almost ended up being a pick six just because he
Yeah, I saw
underthrew
that.
the
The guy
route.
just dropped it. Yeah,
Yeah. And so it so easily could have switched the game up. And it's preseason, it's early, but like you
it's
said, it's really exciting. Like he could end up being a top 5 fantasy quarterback one day.
Red. Did you have any other takeaways from preseason games? I mean, I saw Tyquan Thornton look decent, which is awesome because the Pats do not know how to draft wide receivers. So if he could really pick up some slack in our receiving core, that would be awesome for us. But it's first game preseason's hard to watch too many of them, so I don't know if I have a ton of takeaways as much as like just like
Yeah.
Deshaun looks bad, but I mean just random things like that.
Yeah. We're definitely the dog days of summer. So what is exciting that preseason's here? The George Pickens stuff looks really exciting. That Pickett
That dude's a
for
stud.
Pickens. Yeah.
Yeah, he was looking good.
Yeah. I had some Chiefs fans texting me this past week and they're like, maybe we should have taken Pickens. And I'm like, maybe. But Sky Moore does look pretty good. But yeah, Pickens looks like he could easily end up supplanting Chase Claypool, which I was really excited about this season. But yeah, it's just an embarrassing of riches at wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers at all times, seemingly.
Pickens might have the good fortune of going up against like quarterback threes and fours or just like nickel guys for like the entire first half of the season while teams are figuring out, who they're trying to guard on that Steelers offense, and he might feast. The only thing really holding him back is quarterback play. At least right now, right? I mean, indications from camp are he's doing well. Obviously, we haven't seen him in a live game yet. Preseason can only go so far, but man, he might be sneaking up some draft boards, or he could be a really sneaky pick that other people haven't been talking about. We talk so much about like Drake London, Kadarius Toney, and a lot of first year and second year guys in our last podcast, but Pickens might be moving up a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah. And another guy that you mentioned briefly was Deshaun Watson, played this past weekend in preseason. He had his first game in like over 2 years almost. And it was his first start for the Cleveland Browns. He had a really awkward pregame interview. They're trying to decide if he should be getting the full season suspension or he proposed back to the NFL 8 games plus a pretty hefty financial penalty. It's really awkward. It's really weird timing. There's a giant chant with a bunch of expletives going from the Jaguars fans towards him, pretty reasonably so. Plus, Deshaun played like absolute dog this past weekend. He went 1 for 5 for 7 yards, didn't score a touchdown. And like it's preseason, it doesn't really matter, and he hasn't played football in a long time. But it's definitely like disappointing for someone that is getting $250 million guaranteed.
Yeah, a lot of rust to shake off there, which again looks like might not even matter if he's going to be sitting the season anyways. It's not fun talking about the Deshaun situation, but it is pretty relevant for football. You're talking a potential top 5 quarterback, and just an entire team or franchise in limbo. So we'll try to keep updates going there, but keep it brief. So didn't look great, and it's not looking good for his prospect this year.
Yeah, 100%. On a slightly lighter news, I just want to bring this up real quick. So the Springfield Cardinals were my back home team. So I grew up in Springfield, Missouri. They are the AA affiliate for the St. Louis Cardinals. And they were the games that I always went to as a kid. It's like $5 for a ticket, $1 for a hot dog. Like it's cheap Tuesday night entertainment sort of thing. And they were the national news this past weekend because this guy, a prospect for the Cardinals, he's not even in the top 30 prospects for the Cardinals. So he's really not even like that great. His name's Chandler Redmond. He did something that's only been done once in baseball history, like organized professional baseball history, which was hit for the home run cycle. So basically what ended up happening is he hit a solo home run a 2-run home run, a 3-run home run, and then a grand slam. And he not only did that, but he also did it in 4 consecutive innings because the Cardinals just destroyed the Amarillo Sod Poodles, which, great name, Sod Poodles. I love that. And actually, the other person that's ever done the home run cycle was also on the Springfield Cardinals. Or it was the Northwest Travelers back then. They had a different AA affiliate, but it's always been within the St. Louis Cardinals organization. So pretty dang cool. I thought it was pretty interesting.
That is really interesting. I think a neat part about that too, like you're saying, is like there had to have been probably 1,000 kids in attendance that are going to be Cardinals fans for life now because of this, because it's just such a neat experience getting to go to minor league baseball where it's a $5 ticket and you can basically walk up to the home team dugout and just watch the game because it's kind of like anything goes. Yeah, that's really awesome to see, really awesome to hear. Absolutely wild. I don't know how you hit 4 home runs in a game, let alone of like different run values. So just really impressive all around.
Yeah, it's a lot of luck, but I thought it was pretty fun. Also, hot take: Springfield Cardinals logo much better than St. Louis Cardinals logo. I know people love the bird on the bat. Springfield's got it down. So we're going to take a commercial break, and then we're going to go into our positional rankings for tight ends. Today's podcast episode has been brought to you by AMC Theaters. Have you ever been late to a movie? The sheer panic you feel as you walk up to the usher, full of social anxiety as you realize you indeed cannot get ready in less than 15 minutes, even though you have repeatedly convinced yourself you can, despite years of failed attempts. The usher predictably rolls their eyes and, after a rather rude sigh, lets you by, despite your 15-minute tardiness. You run into the theater fully expecting the movie opening scenes to be more than wrapped up, and you likely miss some key foreshadowing that will come back to bite you later in the movie. You compile a pool of sweat as you plop down into your seat and look up. Instead of an intense action scene, you see the face of Nicole Kidman. Her cold, dead eyes stare at you, mocking you, while she drones on about how incredible going to a theater is. She continues to preach to the choir, just like she has been for over 1.5 plus years now while the COVID-19 pandemic has been lingering on. Somehow, despite all of your lateness, all of your laziness, the trailers are still going on, spoiling a variety of cash grab movies that look more mid than Chicago Bulls post Michael Jordan. Thank you, AMC and Nicole Kidman, for making people want to bang their head against the wall like they're stuck in a Jordan Peele movie. And thanks again for sponsoring today's pod. Alrighty, JVD. So we are doing tight end rankings this week. This is a bit of an interesting position because there is definitely a dead zone of tight ends. But what's your general draft strategy going into tight ends this year?
Yeah, if there's one thing people know about me, it's I love a good, nice tight end. So this is a very exciting group to talk about. I even played tight end in high school. Um,
How would you
no,
describe
just
how would you describe your tight end style? Are you like a Zach Ertz kind of guy, or more of a
no,
TJ
yeah,
Hawkinson?
um, I'm. It's hard to say, right? There's kind of two ways to go about it, and I think it's not that you can't do it any other way, but it's like you either grab an elite guy, right? So you're talking the Travis Kelce's, the Kyle Pitts of the world, or you just need to punt the position until like a tight end falls to you. So highlighting is Zach Ertz. I don't know if I'll have any shares of him because he just comes in a weird time in the draft where like I'm rounding out kind of my lottery pick receivers at that point, and a lottery pick receiver has a lot more upside than a okay tight end. So it's weird because it's a position that if you have it solidified going into the season, you're going to outscore a lot of people at that spot. And that's a great feeling going, week to week, like, hey, I can get 15 to 20 out of my tight end because a lot of people might get 5, right? So you gotta, you gotta be willing to spend up to get that production. But if you've never had a roster with like a Travis Kelce in your tight end slot, it feels fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the worst things in fantasy football is like having to stream tight ends. But it's even worse whenever you draft a tight end in like the 6th, 7th round, expecting them to produce better than a streaming tight end, but then they just don't. They're always just super touchdown dependent. You basically are like hoping for 3 catches for 30 yards, the Hunter Henrys of the world, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you are 100% right. We were talking about this pre-draft. There's kind of a dead zone for every single position this year, and it's definitely a dead zone. I would argue right after the first top 5 tight ends, which we'll get into our rankings in just a bit. After that, in my opinion, you might as well just wait. Like 7 rounds
Hmm.
almost. Like wait until the end of the draft because it's all about scarcity and diminishing returns, right? If you can get a
Yeah.
guy in the 10th round who ends up performing just as well as someone that you would have gotten in the 6th round, you're better off. You were able to use those picks on better positions, better value on better guys, and that's my general strategy this year. If
Yeah.
I don't get top
And
guy, I'm moving on.
right, and we talked, last episode with the quarterbacks about just the idea of positional scarcity. So where quarterbacks, even though they're a much more important position on the field, there's plenty of them for a 12 team fantasy league, which is kind of your average size fantasy league. It's almost the exact opposite for tight end, right? Like this might be the most scarce position. So you're talking 3 to 4 legit dudes at tight end for 12 teams. So this is one of those ones, yeah, if there's the haves and the have nots, and being a have not is tough. So, either you get the guy or yeah, wait till the very end. And a strategy that I'm okay with is like taking maybe not three, but 2 picks on like really just out there, like no one thinks of them type tight ends in the hopes that they become someone special. And if not, just cut bait right away and start streaming because you're going to be in that position anyway.
Yeah, 100%. So we have the exact same top three. So can you walk me through why you have Kelsey, Pitts, then Andrews in your top three?
Yeah, I mean Travis Kelsey at number one is really one of those just until he proves he's not the guy, he's got to be the first tight end off the board. So even though Andrews ended last year at tight end one, Travis Kelsey's consistency was at like 6 or 7 seasons in a row at 1,000 yards. I mean the clear number one option for Patrick Mahomes in a very very potent offense. So he's that guy. He's getting older, but it's in such a weird position. It's like I'd rather be, I'd rather have the misfortune of having Kelsey the year he finally falls off than like keep not getting him and watching other teams put up wide receiver one numbers in their tight end slot.
Yeah, 100%. I think
So
I think
yeah,
you I think you 100% nailed it. I had the exact same thought whenever I was ranking Kelsey and Andrews. So I think a lot in football about the mean, the average, the expected performance for a general player. Kelsey's mean is so much higher than everybody else's. His like floor is so much higher than everybody else's. And Andrews is a good tight end. I love Mark Andrews. Like he was a great value coming out of Oklahoma for the Baltimore Ravens, but his floor is a little bit lower, right? He had that outlier season last year, over 1,300 yards, leading the entire NFL in tight end receiving yards. Realistically, he's going to revert back to the mean a little bit. He had a bit of an outlier season, and I could see this year being a little bit more disappointing. And that Kelsey floor is just way higher, and I think he's the obvious number one pick when it comes to tight ends.
yeah. And then the guy we're not talking about that we both have at number two with Kyle Pitts is it's kind of the pure upside. So he has a path for kind of having a Mark Andrews type season where their team isn't great, but they don't have a ton of receiving options. So, Kyle Pitts could just get, constantly fed the ball because it's only him or Drake London that are going to be getting targets out of that offense. So, he's in line to be a tight end with over 100 targets this year, which I mean, if you can get that, like that's just lock it in as a great spot to be. And then, we talked about it already before. I mean, the dude is just a freak athlete. So any chance you get to watch him get the ball a ton of times, week in and week out, is worth kind of putting him over Mark Andrews, where I think last year we saw the ceiling, which is tight end one. But to expect it again, like how we're talking about Cooper Cup, I think you're asking a lot where you're just trying to get these people to keep repeating as the best performer. And there's just too much variance in football to be like, oh, clearly he's just going to keep, getting 150 targets or 160. I mean, he had just an insane number of targets. And it's like the Ravens want to run the ball. They want to spread the ball out a little bit more. They're not going to just keep exclusively feeding Andrews. So Pitts might have kind of the exact opposite where it's like they need to feed him this year. So I think for that reason, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's why we kind of both have him at number two.
Yeah, not to keep lumping it on Andrews, but like if you are an opposing defense now, you had an entire offseason of looking at Mark Andrews tape. You don't think you're keying in on that guy. Like you don't realize that like that's basically wide receiver one now for the Ravens. Like you're going to put your entire defensive scheme towards stopping Mark Andrews, and it's going to open up opportunities for others, but that's going to hurt Andrews' production. And you want to talk about having a wide receiver level production as a tight end, it's 100% Kyle Pitts. He's basically a wide receiver and a tight end body. He had the most receiving yards like ever for a rookie tight ends, like him and Mike Ditka back in like the 80-some Bears, like an absolute insane level of production. I remember like one of the big conversations around the Lions drafting a tight end, which they did twice in the top 10 this decade, which is really sad. They drafted Eric Ebron and then they drafted TJ Hawkinson. And people, after they had disappointing rookie seasons, is like, oh, you always have a disappointing season whenever you're a rookie tight end. It's really hard to produce a lot of yardage. But Kyle Pitts completely bucked that trend. He had over 1,000 yards last year, which is absolutely insane as a rookie tight end. So I think the important thing is you're trying to draft for future value. And with Kyle Pitts, you're definitely not drafting based off past value. You're definitely drafting on future value. And I think Mariota can definitely support a good tight end.
Yeah, because Kyle isn't running like these long go routes, right? So, Mariota, the concern is, can he really accurately deliver a ball 40, 50 yards downfield? It's like Pitts is just so fast and so quick in those routes. He just needs good, accurate 10-yard passes and then just let the guy run the ball after he catches it, which he's shown he is more than capable of doing. So, and then I think you have to add in two. We had like what, 2 or 3 touchdowns last year? Like, you get that many yards to have no touchdowns is just, it's crazy to see. So it's like, he could very easily put the exact same performance, but then also have 5 more touchdowns. So I mean, he's just really in line to have a very good season. There's plenty of reasons to be very high on Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, you're 100% right with that. I didn't even think about the touchdowns. That's so true. His points are going to be so much better this year. There's a stat called like expected touchdowns, and the guy who was like the poster child of underachieving in touchdowns was always Julio Jones. The man just like couldn't sniff the end zone for some reason. Now it seems like DJ Moore has kind of taken that mantle a little bit. He gets a ton of yards, but like doesn't seem really get touchdowns. I have a hard time seeing Pitts being that guy. Back at Florida, he was a touchdown machine still, big body that can easily catch balls over the middle. So I don't see that being an issue. And so again, regression to the mean a little bit. That's going to mean Pitts is going to be raising up a little bit in the touchdown category. So let's move on a little bit. Let's go a little further down the list. I think the most interesting ranking that I see on your list is Darren Waller. UM has tight end 6, whereas he's going as tight end 5, pretty much as consensus. I kind of see that as like a tier break a little bit, going from Waller down to the next guys. So why are you a little lower on Waller and have Dalton Schultz above him?
Right. Yeah. You say one position, like as ADP seems like, okay, he's picking at straws here a little bit, but yeah, like you said, it's kind of breaking on the tier where I'm kind of bumping him down a little lower, saying like, hey, maybe we're not reaching early for Waller. He had a couple really good seasons where it's like this has to be like your second pick off the board tight end. The issue is people didn't realize like his rookie year, if you will, his first year of relevance, he was already 28. So I think he's 29 or 30 at this point on an offense that will be very good. And Carr, looks his way, but they just got Devontae Adams that's going to be soaking up a lot more targets. They've got Hunter Renfrow that's going to be getting a ton of targets, and Waller spent a lot of last year injured, and you can't help but think like tight end's not exactly a long lasting position, right? We've just seen too many guys that once the wheels start falling off, that they're all the way off. And I just don't want to be the guy holding Waller during another season of him just looking broken down because he had 2 really good high production seasons, but at an old age to where now his body can't keep up.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I think that the big thing that was propping up Waller for a while was his targets, right? Because for a while it looked like there was nobody out wide receiver for the Raiders. They had Aguilar for a bit, then they had Ruggs, rest in peace there. Then they had Hunter Renfrow really emerge, but before that it was the Waller show 100%. There were a couple games last year where he got like almost like 20 targets in a singular game, which is like insane level.
Yeah, it's the first couple weeks of the season that happened. You're like, you felt awesome drafting him, and then it broke down. It's like, oh, now I'm getting 3 targets if he's even playing.
Yeah, and to your point, if he was playing, it was injury related for a lot of the rest of the season. So I think I'm still a little anchored to like his ability as like a top shelf tight end, and I'm really hoping. But honestly, after Andrews, this is just me personally. I'm not drafting a tight end after Andrews. I don't necessarily want Kittle. I don't want Waller. I want Hawkinson. Like that's the start of the tight end dead zone for me, and I don't think you're going to be seeing a ton of value. And so, in like my overall rankings, I have those guys a little lower, but in terms of tight end rankings, that's where I have those guys.
Yeah, Waller, I'm not entirely against, and same with Kittle drafting where they're at because they have the upside of the top 3 guys with the risk factor really baked into their draft position because you can get both of them at like 60 overall, 70 overall, somewhere in there. Like 47, 60. Sorry, trying to pick it out on our list here, but so that is cooked in a little bit, but it's just like if it works, it's great, but there's just so much risk involved that, is that where you want to be spending? Because again, that's pick 60. It's like, okay, am I taking Lamar and having one of the top potential quarterbacks, or am I taking maybe the fifth best tight end and hoping they don't get injured? So they're just in a weird area of the draft where there's just other players I'm wanting to take. Now, if he falls to you and it's like, oh, I'm picking between two or three like receivers or running backs that I'm just not that high on, then that's when I would grab Kittle, grab Waller where they're getting drafted.
Definitely. I see what you're saying. So we on this pod are certified haters. So who are some other guys that you really hate this year in terms of value?
In terms of value, TJ Hawkinson, which I know might hurt for you as the Detroit guy, but there's a lot of signs that just don't look great for the guy. He's definitely in the dead zone of like, there's just rookie receivers I want to take over Hawkinson where he's getting drafted. There's, rookie running backs. Like there's just guys with a ton of upside. And I think we've seen about all Hawkinson can be. And that was, with Matt Stafford, he just hasn't looked that great with Goff. He'll have a few games with a ton of targets, but Goff's just not an efficient passer. And I think there's just better receiving threats on the Lions now between Amon Ra as well as their rookie, who you're going to correct me on his name. So,
Oh, Jameson Williams.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Even though James Mullins is going to come in after weeks 5 or 6, and I think they're going to want to really lean on DeAndre Swift, and I think TJ just might be the odd guy out. He'll produce a couple really great games, and you'll be like, I don't know what Jimmy's talking about here, and then he's going to put up some stinkers where you're just like, why is this guy in my roster?
Yeah, I thought you were going to have me correct your pronunciation. I'm like, I'm not the pronunciation police here. I'm fucking up words every other minute. But yeah, no, I can totally see it. I can see Hawkinson really falling off a cliff a little bit this year. Goff may not necessarily be good enough to feed that many mouths. And I think that's the same issue for two other quarterbacks that I have really low on my rankings. So Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz are both going in the top 10 of tight ends, but I have them well outside the top 10, almost to the outside the top 15 even. Dallas Goedert for the exact same reason. They got A.J. Brown coming into that offense this year, and I think there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed, and I think Goddard will get lost in the shuffle. And then same thing for Zach Ertz. They just brought in Marquise Brown. Rondale Moore is another year older, and I think there's going to be some Zach Ertz fall off as well in terms of age. He's definitely over the hill. You mentioned the age for Darren Waller. Ertz is definitely going to be hitting that upper echelon here very shortly. So those are two guys I'm way lower on.
And I need you to make the argument for me here, because two dudes that I just don't understand ever drafting would be Evan Ingram and Irv Smith, and they're kind of going back to back. It's like, I just don't know how many times these guys have to do absolutely nothing for you on your roster before people stop drafting them. Like, yeah, Irv Smith was fantastic in college, and then I don't know what he's done since being in the NFL. And I don't want to knock the person. It's just, as far as a fantasy production goes, it's been non-existent. Like, I don't see a reason to be drafting him. And then Evan Ingram, I don't know what the argument could be. Like the dude, I mean, other than the Pro Bowl season, which was like the most bizarre, how is this guy a Pro Bowl or Pro Bowl season ever? Like you just watch him drop, clutch pass after clutch pass to where it's like, I just don't know why anyone would be drafting him at all, let alone, a top 15 tight end. Like I just don't get it.
Yeah, I don't understand the Ingram hype train. I think the idea is he's on a new team now, and he's going to be with Trevor Lawrence. Younger quarterbacks like to throw to tight ends maybe as like a bit of a security blanket. But I don't get the hype either. Like he definitely had that one good year as I think it was like a rookie or a sophomore. He's super athletic, which is like the thing that's really nice. He kind of fits that like Jimmy Graham mold a little bit. But yeah, I don't really see it either. That Pro Bowl season was super strange. And that's why I hate whenever we do like these Hall of Fame cases for guys like in Eli Manning and stuff. In football, especially, you have so many injury replacements, or you have guys that are going to the Super Bowl that don't end up going, and so you have these like Super Bowl replacements as well. And it's like a Pro Bowl means nothing. Like Jared Goff was a Pro Bowler at one point, so I hate when we get to that argument at the end of the year, at the end of people's careers, when they're like, "Oh, he went to 10 Pro Bowls." I'm like, how many of those are legitimate, and how many of those were injury replacements?
Yeah, it's a Pro Bowl is literally just a stat meaning you didn't make the Super Bowl.
Yeah, pretty much exactly. So yeah, I don't get the Ingram hype. I do get the Irv Smith hype, and it's 100% a bet on Kirk Cousins and the new offensive coordinator they have there. The new offensive coordinator, we talked about him a little bit in a previous episode. It's Wade Phillips' son, so you have that football pedigree and the family with it. And Irv Smith, once again, like it's really easy just to say that tight ends are super athletic. He is one of those super athletic guys, and I think this could end up being the season he breaks out a little bit because like I always try and go for that range a little bit with those tight ends, and like Darren Waller was this guy a few years ago, and I think Irv Smith can end up fitting that mold.
Okay, yeah, and I remember you making that argument a couple episodes ago, so I could see it. But that again, that's my last bench spot filling in type pick. Like I'm just not going for him really
Yeah.
personally. There's a guy that you and I are both really high on that other people, you know, the fantasy degenerates will know the name, but maybe your common person might not. So make the argument of why people need to know who Albert O is, and go ahead and try to pronounce his last name first try.
Oh, God.
But why Albert O tight end for Denver? Why are we taking him?
I heard someone make a very easy pronunciation chart. I need to go back and look at it, but it's like Okwumbunum or something like that. So he went to Mizzou. So he's definitely a Missouri guy, someone that I know pretty well. In college, amazing. Like super athletic, was able to do all the blocking that you needed and has the receiving upside. And I think that's what's going to help him earn trust whenever he's in Denver is now the tight end one. He's previously playing behind Noah Fant. Noah Fant just got traded in the Russell Wilson trade. And Russell Wilson doesn't necessarily always support tight ends, but he definitely is capable of it whenever there's a tight end that's actually decent. Like when Jimmy Graham was there, he was definitely relevant. When Will Dissly was healthy, he was definitely relevant as a fantasy player. So I think Alberto could end up being that next guy. And there are a lot of mouths to feed in Denver, but I also think there will be a lot of yards available in Denver this year with Russell Wilson at quarterback. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, adding to that, and I don't know if you mentioned Jacob Hollister, but Hollister was a guy that what couldn't quite cut it on the Patriots. Like just never seemed to mesh with Tom, but then went to the Seahawks and actually performed pretty well with Russell. Like Russell likes his tight ends and he likes his guys that are deep and open downfield because he can throw that nice deep ball. So I'd love to have a tight end on Denver, and I think we've mentioned it a few times. Just like this Denver offense is very exciting right now. It's an embarrassment of riches. So all it takes is one of them getting injured, and then the piece that you got looks even that much better. There's just going to be a lot of volume going around, so it'll be pretty exciting to have some action there.
Yeah, Broncos country. Let's ride. So who are some of those?
Broncos country.
Let's
That's
ride.
right.
So who are some of the guys that are like right around that 20 range or later? Some of the sleepers that you really like at tight end this year?
Yes, I mean, so like Tyler Higbee's dead to me after last year. Like last year was the perfect year to do well, and now he's just older, and it's clear, it's not going to go to him. Hooper, I think Hooper might be a good pick. So he's been on Cleveland for a long time, and Baker and Hooper just didn't quite have it figured out together. But all reports from camp right now for Austin Hooper are like, hey, he's wide receiver 2 on this team because they just do not trust Traylon Burks yet, and then Bobby Trees is kind of wide receiver 1. So Hooper might be getting volume, get a lot of good play action pass, kind of cross in the middle, safety valve dump offs from Ryan Tannehill. He could have a really good season. So, I think I'd put him on my radar. I think Cam Brate for Tampa Bay. So Tom loves his tight ends, and Gronk's not there anymore. So, he doesn't have any rapport with Kyle Rudolph, but he definitely has shown, plenty of ability to throw the ball to Cam. So, OJ Howard's gone, Rob Gronkowski's gone, Cameron Brate's still there. So, I mean, like that's the last remaining tight end that he's thrown plenty of balls to. That's a late guy that it could be where are streaming it for good matchups. Again, like this isn't someone you're reaching for. This is like, oh, I have my last pick, and this is maybe my best option is to pick like an interesting tight end versus like a wide receiver I know I'm going to drop after a week.
Yeah, 100%. These are all guys that are going like 200th or so. So like basically barely rosterable. And some of that you're like okay with cutting those first few weeks. So it ends up working out. I really like the.
Do not be afraid to cut these guys. Do not get attached to your late round tight end. Like it doesn't take long to figure out that they're not going to be anything special. And again, it's like these guys are great players. The tight end position's difficult. I don't want to devalue that. I respect it a lot, but like we're talking about fantasy production. It's very easy to find out that the offense does not value your tight end, and you just got to cut bait and find someone else.
Yeah. Offenses will tell you very early on if they are going like 3 wide receiver, 4 wide receiver more often, or if they're actually putting a tight end out there in receiving positions. So, yeah, I 100% understand you on the Austin Hooper thing. I forgot about how like they had John Smith for a while, and he ended up being a pretty good fantasy player for people. Now he's in New England whenever Tannehill was throwing to him. So I could see the Austin Hooper hype. He was pretty good at Atlanta. I really like the Cameron Brate take. They do have Kyle Rudolph now, which could eat into his target share a little bit. But yeah, with no more Gronk, it just makes a lot of sense. Cameron Brate definitely has the talent. He's definitely a touchdown vulture. So I think he's someone that could end up being really great in fantasy this year. Some other guys that I really liked, Gerald Everett. He's now on the Chargers. He used to be with the Rams. I think he's super talented. He was stuck behind Tyler Higbee for a while, and I think this could be the year that he really shines. He's with Justin Herbert now, being his quarterback, so I think there's some opportunity for growth there. Another guy that I really like for an opportunity to step in is Trey McBride, the tight end for the Arizona Cardinals. If I remember correctly, he's the tight end from Colorado State. I'm pretty sure he was.
Rookie, right?
Yeah,
He's kind of like the first tight end off the board this
yeah,
year.
yeah. It was a Mackey Award winner, if
Okay.
I remember correctly, which is the top tight end in college. So he's definitely got the receiving pedigree in the past. And if Zach Ertz gets injured early, that could end up being someone that can step right in and take over for him.
Yep. Can you give me an argument for Noah Fant? I've seen a lot of excitement around Noah. I myself have him higher than you do. It seems like, even if the Seahawks aren't great this year, it's like they're going to have to throw the ball. And Noah Fant's, he's a very athletic guy, a top 10 pick at tight end or top 15. Or no, was he like 30th overall? I mean, a first round pick at tight end,
Mm-hmm.
wherever it was that he got picked. And just even if it's Geno Smith throwing the ball, it's like the guy's going to get some targets. Like I could see it really working out for Noah this year.
Yeah, yeah. So Noah Fant's ADP right now is the 16th tight end off the board. I have him as 12th. You have him at 7th. I totally lead towards you with your 7th take. Noah Fant is uber talented. He was in a very weird position coming out of college. He went to Iowa at the exact same time as TJ Hawkinson, and then they were the exact same draft. What are the odds that two NFL tight ends ends up being on the same roster? He was actually more of the receiving guy than a lot of people give him credit for whenever he was at Iowa than Hawkinson. And so I think the pedigree is 100% there. I feel like whenever he was in Denver, he definitely didn't get the share of targets that he deserved. He was with some pretty bad quarterback play and offensive line play as well whenever he was there. And the offensive line is not much better in Seattle, but there's definitely options there. And I think they gave up a lot in order to get Noah Fant to keep him in that trade. So I think there will be a pretty big precedence from the GM and just the staff in general to feed him targets and kind of justify the trade a little bit. So I'm a fan.
Yeah,
I'm a fan.
and I think you can get him late enough that it's like if that's your, if you're doing that double tight end strategy, like I grab myself a Noah Fant and like a Pat Fryermuth or something, and it's looking really bad for Noah, but Pat's still getting targets. It's like okay, trade bait maybe because of name or just cut him. Um, or he starts balling out the first few weeks. Like, sweet, I got a good tight end for next to nothing of a pick.
Yeah, yeah. When a guy's that young, like he's going to keep improving. And so I'd rather bet on a guy who's young, like Noah Fant, continuing to get better than a Zach Ertz who's going 50 positions higher, who's most likely on the downswing of his career. So I think it just makes way more sense to get Noah Fant out 150 than a Zach Ertz at 94. Like it's a no-brainer in my mind.
Okay, so we're kind of running out of people to talk about. So maybe we could pull a segment from last week with the sleeper agent. So who would be your deep sleeper pick out of the tight ends?
Deep sleeper. I already mentioned Trey McBride. Definitely go with him. You're going to talk about him later, but I love the Kyle Rudolph take. I think he could end up being a touchdown vulture as well, just like with Cameron Brate. Logan Thomas is someone that's kind of fallen off a little bit. He had the injury. So just to recap a little bit. So Logan Thomas was a quarterback in college at Virginia Tech. He went to the Lions, converted over to tight end, and has actually been pretty decent. He had 800 yards or so a couple of years ago. And whenever you're drafting a player that late, he's going outside the top 200. I just think he's definitely worth a flyer at. And Carson Wentz likes his tight ends in general, so he's a decent player to target, in my opinion.
Cool. I could not more strongly disagree with Logan Thomas. The reason being his injuries that you're like kind of brushing off are all head injuries. It's like that dude's like half a concussion away from not being allowed to play NFL football again. Like I don't even know why they let him out there. So I'd be very nervous even thinking of taking him as a flyer. But I'll take the homer pick here. And you mentioned him, but Jonnu Smith is an incredibly athletic tight end that the Patriots just did not use well last year. And a lot of indications coming out of camp of it's like our Galaxy Brain Matt Patricia is trying to find ways to get Johnny the ball. So, if we find, week 1 or 2, we start really actually utilizing our athletes instead of just exclusively running the ball, I think Jonnu could prove to be pretty valuable because every play that he made this past year for the Patriots was like some unbelievable athletic, like leaping grab. And then we were just like, let's go ahead and give him no actual easy passes, like only difficult plays for the guy.
Yeah, see, you're not going to convince me on that sleeper pick either, because as a Lions fan, I had to deal with Patricia for years. I don't think he's capable of a decent offense. So best of luck with that one. But yeah, Jonathan Smith is athletic, but I don't think the volume is going to be there at all. So let's move on to some new takes that we're doing. We're doing this new segment called Persuadable Bouncer. So this kind of fits in with our arguments for the sleeper agents a little bit. So basically, the idea of this is there's this meme called the Persuadable Bouncer. It's this guy who's either going to let you into the club or he's not going to let you into the club. So the idea here is you have to have a spicy enough take. You have to have something that's persuadable. You have to convince the other person. And I have to convince James of my take being spicy enough to be let in, and vice versa. So then James has to try and convince me that his take should be let into the club. So we have a handful of takes here, and we're just going to run them by each other, defend them a little bit, and see who gets let in.
Yeah, no, first of all, this is exciting, I think. So right now, the fans are getting to see the progression of us still having a new segment every week. I will be excited to see when we hit the episode where we're finally like, hey, we're out of ideas. We're going back to the first ever hot take idea. But for now, we're still coming up with new, fresh ways to deliver the spiciest takes possible.
Exactly. So these are super fun. So how about you lay your first one on me?
Okay, so I'm going to say the Jaguars are going to win the AFC South.
Wow.
Right? So why do I think this? Okay. The way this is going to happen is Matt Ryan doesn't pan out, which is believable. The guy's old. It sounds like the team isn't loving him at first. There's like weird reports of like, oh, Matt Ryan's a jerk, and the team's not really falling in love with him. So like, there's just weird reports coming out of Colts camp, and it's like the Colts just seem like kind of a cursed franchise that can't beat the Jaguars anyway. So that's like 2 free wins right there for the Jags. Okay, the Titans. This is going to be a couple injuries, throw them out of the running. They don't have Derrick Henry this season. You personally hate Ryan Tannehill, so it's like Tannehill is going to have a bad year. Okay, that's the second team they beat. The Texans, they're the Texans. I don't see Lovie Smith throwing up some sick, unbelievable game-winning type strategies for the Texans. I think they still have a couple more years before they become relevant. So it's going to be a weird, like 9-win team wins the division. And I don't see why the Jaguars, who potentially have the best quarterback in the division, with if Trevor Lawrence comes into his own here in the next year, that they can't go ahead and be that team to win. They've had so many great picks, right? They've got 2 great pass rushers. They spent their first overall pick on another pass rusher. They're adding weapons, so they really believe in Christian Kirk. They reset the wide receiver market to get him. They've got Evan Ingram. Who knows? Maybe he comes into his own with the Jaguars, but it's just one of those ones where the division's so up in the air that if the Colts kind of slip up, I could see the Jags just stepping in and going for it. I think we both agree the Titans being the 1 seed last year was kind of fluky. And I could see them really regressing back to just kind of an average season, and then the Jags just kind of pouncing on it.
This is something. So I definitely think this gets into the club. All the reasons that you mentioned, but also on top of that, the Jaguars have a sneaky, really hard schedule this year. So, like, if they actually pull off winning the AFC South, I would be uber impressed. So they have the NFC East that they're playing, which I think is actually sneaky pretty deep. So they have to play the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Commanders, which I think are all 3 quality teams, and then the Giants, who have talent, but like we'll see what they end up doing. And then they also have to play the entire AFC West this year. I don't know if you're aware of that. So they have to play the Broncos.
AFC West is tough, but that means every other team has to play the AFC West, right? So it's even playing field for the whole division. They just got to win the division, which means they just got to beat up on other teams that could have some bad luck.
Exactly. So that's why I could see this end up happening. I think the AFC South winner could end up being like 7-10 or something insane this year.
Oh, easily. Yeah, they don't seem to be the best division, but it could also just be the Colts running away, like the Colts being smart to be like, JT, here's the ball 30 times, go win us the game.
This is spicy. You're definitely in the club. Come on in. So
yes,
my first take that I want to get into the club with is that Kenneth Gainwell is going to be an RB1 this year. So here's a thought, right? Miles Sanders came out in an interview and said, do not draft me in fantasy this year. The man is basically telling us, do not even come close to drafting me. Like, that is the clearest sign that you can get when it comes to fantasy. So that's already step number one. Step number two, even if that doesn't happen, so let's say the coaches are like, hey, suck it up, Miles Sanders. You're going to play. We're going to give you volume. He's not been that effective. He's been injured a lot, getting like 3 yards a carry all the time. Not a fan. Early on in preseason, Kenneth Gainwell's been getting a lot of run with the first stringers in camp and with the preseason games as well. And I think this is going to be a really explosive Eagles offense. Like, I could easily see the Eagles in my preseason scheduling rankings and such that I have the Eagles winning 11 games this upcoming year. I think they're going to go 11-6 in the regular season. I think Kenneth Gainwell is going to be in a lot of games where they're going to be passing it in early downs and passing it short because Jalen Hurts doesn't have the biggest arm. So I think he could really have that receiving upside. And then later in games, I think they're going to be up a lot, and I think he's going to get a lot of run on the ground. So I could easily see Kenneth Gainwell being a top 12 running back. That's the cutoff for RB1 if you have a lot of friends and you're in a league that are with 12 people. So I think Kenneth Gainwell will be an RB1, which is spicy in my opinion because he's definitely not going that high in rankings. I'll look up what his ADP is right now, but he's not going that high in the drafts.
See, as the bouncer here, I don't want to be mean, but I don't want to just let any take in. So I think the one issue I have with your take is you did not address the fact that Jalen Hurts is going to steal every touchdown from running backs in this Eagles offense. And that's going to make it really tough if you have limited touchdown upside as a running back to be RB1.
But you see,
however, saying RB2 isn't really going for spicy, right? So like saying RB1, now that's getting after some spice. So I think I'm going to be nice. I'm going to say this is spicy enough. I'll let it in the club because I do see a route for this actually happening.
But you see what I mean? Like, that is spicy because, like you said, I totally agree. Like, Jalen Hurts is definitely a guy who runs it on the towards the end zone whenever they're getting out the goal line situation. So I could totally see Gainwell getting a little bit of that, but it's spicy enough because it's not totally possible. So he's going as RB42 right now. So I'm basically saying that he's going to outperform his ADP by 30 slots. I totally could see it happening, but it's spicy too.
Okay. So then my next take here, coming out with this Zach Wilson injury, is that the Jets are actually going to be a better team without Zach Wilson this year. Now, again, it's a little off in the sense that he might end up still playing the season, but like, all right, let's go through the possibility of maybe a Joe Flacco-led Jets, okay? This team ends up being way more conservative with the ball, right? Joe Flacco doesn't turn it over the way Zach Wilson does, and they end up just letting their really good, young, talented players get the ball in space and just go for it. The issue I see with Zach Wilson leading the team is he's going to try to make the plays, whereas Joe will let the players make the plays. If what I'm saying is making sense, like Zach's going to scramble around, try to huck it, chuck it deep. Joe might just go, screw it, I'm not getting hit. 1, 2, 3, dump it off to Breece Hall. So I could see, the team just being better without Zach at quarterback. But the issue is that doesn't help them out in the long term with trying to figure out if this is actually your QB1 or not. I also am aware that this doesn't feel nearly as spicy as Jags winning AFC South because saying Jets are bad is pretty confident that Jets are just bad.
All right, so I see what you're saying. You definitely set a very high bar with the Jacksonville Jaguars winning a division, which is crazy. In the year,
I came in too hot.
Yeah,
I came in so hot.
In the year of our Lord 2022, it's pretty crazy. That's pretty spicy. The problem I have with this is this even a hot take? Like, Joe Flacco is an elite quarterback. He's done it before.
Do not. I'm going to cut you off. Joe Flacco is not elite. He won a Super Bowl.
He's won a Super Bowl.
He's not elite.
He was the highest paid quarterback in the league at one point. And the Robert Saleh, I don't know if you saw this, he came out and said, the head coach of the Jets, that Joe Flacco is a starter in this league. He is that quality of a player still to this day. Even though he flamed out in Denver, even though he flamed out in Philadelphia, now he's on the New York Jets. And Zach Wilson, one of his biggest issues last year is that he would hold on to the ball way too long and he would end up getting sacked. It wasn't necessarily because his offensive line was bad. It's because he was playing poorly. Now they have a worse offensive line. And now, because Mekhi Becton just went down, they're starting left tackle. Now Joe Flacco's coming in. He gets rid of the ball way faster. He's got speedy wide receivers on the outside. He's been in this kind of situation before. He's been there, done that. I just don't think this is that spicy because, like, I feel like this is actually going to happen. It's obviously a hypothetical situation. We'll never really know. But, like, I think they should just start Joe Flacco right now. He's an elite quarterback.
That might be the spicy take, just to start Joe Flacco over your young
Yeah, so
quarterback.
not to slam the door in your
I'll
face.
accept. I'll accept this one not getting in the club. As I'm reading it, I'm like, damn, this did not bring the heat the way the first one
Not
did.
to slam the door in your face, but like I just don't think I'd let you in. I'm sorry. I hope you find some girls to let you in with you. All right, so my second hot take to try and get the club with. The Arizona Cardinals are going to win the NFC in the regular season. So basically, the idea of this is they're going to have the most wins in the NFC. You have to consider all the other teams that are around them, right? And it's a hard thing to do. Getting that little Z next to your name on ESPN, that's not simple. So I think they will outbeat all of their competition in the NFC West, which are very, very quality. Like, obviously, the Seahawks are kind of dog, but then you got the 49ers, you got the Rams, and then there's a bunch of other NFC teams that you got to beat out. You got to beat out the Packers, who are basically winning the conference every single year. You got the Cowboys, who look really quality. You got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady is back. So it's definitely a little spicy in that sense. And I definitely think it's possible as well because you have all the good weapons that we've been talking about in Arizona. You have a coach that's not afraid to do some funky things to keep things fresh. I think the Arizona Cardinals will end up winning 12 games this year and will end up being the number one seed going into the NFC playoffs.
Okay, so the thing that makes this feel less spicy is the fact that they were the number one seed through half the season last year, and then Kyler got hurt, and they just really dropped off from there, right? Like there's a clear direct path to them being the best team in the NFC. Um, However, right, they do have to beat out the Packers. They got to beat out the Rams. Like, there's good teams that they have to be better than. But I think just with the fact that they started the season like 8-1, and then their quarterback got hurt, and that's why they kind of dropped off, makes me feel like you're not bringing it hot enough. Like, I mean, clearly, if a quarterback stays healthy the whole season, they should be better, right? Like Kyler should be better. The team should be better, and I don't think that's that hot. Now, if you said that like 15-2, then I'm like, okay, he's bringing the thunder. But a 12-win season, like I feel like that's like what they're expecting as a team, and that doesn't make it spicy enough for me.
Okay, fair enough. But the new Call of Duty's coming out, so that's definitely going to make Kyler get
The new
worse.
COD's
So I
coming
don't
out,
know.
so if we could just break Kyler's Xbox or PlayStation, I'd feel really comfortable with them getting to their win
Okay,
total.
I'll accept it. But it definitely is like I don't know what their odds are, but I think it's spicy-ish. It's maybe not my best one, but
Okay, so this one, I'm gonna get some hate from some friends here, but I could see the Bears going winless this season. All right, now that's a tough feat to do, right? The last team to do it, was it your Lions or was it the Browns that did it
it's like the
last?
Browns in like 2016. So
Okay, so very few teams have the prized possession of worst team to ever play football, and the Bears have to lose an additional game, right? So that's even tougher to do. But what you run into is like this team is super dysfunctional right now. Like you got their best defensive player Roquan trying to get out of town. You've got, I mean, just like receivers getting hurt. Like I mean, just like everything going on right now just seems not great. The only thing really going against this is like I could see Justin Fields doing enough to like will them to 2 wins, but just as easily, it's like Justin's confidence could just get absolutely shattered after like 2 weeks, and this team just absolutely goes nowhere. I mean, they're really banking on like David Montgomery, turning around his efficiency numbers because he's had good seasons, but he's never been a very efficient runner. And it's like, okay, so now all of a sudden he needs to be more efficient with the ball. You need Darnell Mooney to step up and be the wide receiver one they think he can be, even though he hasn't really proven he can do that yet. You need a defensive coach to turn around a team offensively. Like there's just so much going against them that it's like this team after 5 weeks could very easily be 0-5, and then just like every Chicago fan's like, all right, we're not cheering for a win the rest of the season because we just need to get the number one overall pick and hope for the best. So Bears go winless. Hot take.
I think this is spicy enough for sure. If you look at their schedule, they get to play the Texans, they get to play the Giants, they get to play the Lions twice, which the Bears always have their number. They also get to play the Jets later on in the season. And then like a lot of people discount how hard it is to go winless. Like the Jets looked absolutely terrible a couple of years ago, and then they randomly beat the Rams in like week 15 or something like that. Like stuff like that happens all the time. So I think this is spicy just because it's really hard to do. A lot of heads will roll if the Bears actually go 0-17. And with 17 games, it's you got more opportunities to win. You extra game for
Mhm.
the 16th. So going 0-17, 0-17 would be the first team in NFL history to go 0-17. I think it's definitely spicy enough to get the club. It'd be very funny to see happen too.
Yeah, my best friend's a Bears fan, so I would be there every step of the way, just like you guys can do it. I'll buy you the bag to put over your face. Let's go.
All right, let's run through the rest of these. So my next hot take is that DJ Moore is going to lead the league in receiving yards. He's going to get the receiving yards crown. So right now he's going as like wide receiver 15 or so in drafts. He has had terrible quarterback play in his career. The dude is an A-dot legend. He gets a lot of yards. He doesn't get the touchdowns. And this year, I think they actually get some pretty average quarterback play out of Baker. He's definitely been nowhere near DJ Moore in terms of getting to the top of that. I think his like best season's like 1,200 or so yards, but I think he could end up climbing past a lot of these other guys that are in better position, like just flat out. You got your Justin Jeffersons, your Cooper Kupps, your Jamar Chases. Like those are obvious favorites, like guys that definitely should outgain him. But I think DJ Moore ascends and goes from 15th all the way up to first in terms of receiving.
Yeah, no, I think just seeing this one, I'm like, this is spicy enough for me because of what you start like ended the debate with there, right? Like there's so many other guys that are in just so much better situations, good quarterback play, good offenses around them, that a Justin Jefferson, a Jamar Chase, a Cooper Kupp could easily just go, but get just so many more yards than them. And you're relying on Baker to play the whole season and to play well, or at least well enough that DJ can turn out yards. So this is in the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all
I
for it.
love DJ Moore. I've had so many friends text me recently, like, "Oh, I'm going to draft DJ Moore before you now." I'm like, "Shit, maybe I shouldn't have been so confident in him in a public forum." So
Yeah.
it's tough.
See, what I've been telling friends is that I'm actually taking picks I don't believe in because I'm trying to 8D hyper chess, get them to take people I don't want. So then now all the good players just fall to me. You got to be smart when you're letting all your family and friends listen. You got to really mess with them on the podcast.
Huge brain plays.
Exactly. So my next take here, maybe not the spiciest, but I think there's some elements of some heat here. So I could see Sony Michel having 1,000-yard season. Okay. So the reason why this to me is spicy is like he's kind of been an afterthought. He came in and had this awesome rookie season, but like the awesomeness was in the playoffs where he was just a touchdown machine. He was never really a big yards guy. I think he just had a couple efficient but not great seasons for the Patriots. Then he goes to the Rams. Some guys get hurt, and he's having really good games. Like when the Rams gave him touches, he was producing with those opportunities. Now he comes over to the Dolphins, and it's this really crowded backfield. He's going to have to fight with Chase Edmonds, with oh goodness, who's the guy they've had the last few years that's been kind of relevant for fantasy, but
Miles
no one's
Gaskin.
talking about him anymore?
Miles Gaskin.
Gaskin,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, he's competing with Gaskin, but everything kind of sounds like Gaskin's on the odds with new head coach. So I could really see him being their first two down, kind of we're for sure running the ball tight back, and Chase Edmonds getting more of the receiving work. And this team has so many receiving threats that he's going to get light boxes to where he doesn't have to break tackles, because his thing is he's not great with breaking tackles. He just knows how to hit the right hole and get his yardage. But they're going to be playing these like against these two deep fronts because people are so scared of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill blowing past them that he's going to be able to run the ball 9-10 yards before anyone even touches him. He's just going to slowly, through 150 carries, get to that 1,000 yards and have a really productive season where people are like, holy cow, like I didn't know Sony could do this.
You came out swinging with this one. I honestly thought this was a typo when you wrote down 1,000 yards because you mentioned Chase Edmonds, you mentioned Miles Gaskin, but they also have Raheem Mostert in that backfield as well. So I don't even know how Michelle's going to get carries. You mentioned they're going to be a pass-heavy offense this upcoming year. I definitely see that happening as well. I don't see this happening in like pretty much any semblance, any universe within the multiverse. So you're definitely in the club, but we have documentation of all these, and we'll like try and revisit these later on in the season. I just don't see any way this is feasibly possible. But
I can't wait for week 9. It's like week 9's going to roll around. You're like, hey, Sony Michel's at 50 yards. Do you want to take this back yet, or what's going on?
Yeah, you're going to be stumbling into the club, that's for sure. Alrighty, so my next take, I don't know if this is spicy necessarily, but I think it's spicy as like a draft guy. So I have Kayvon Thibodeau, the 5th overall pick, coming out of Oregon, going to the New York Giants, winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. I personally find this a little bit spicy, mainly because it's the Giants. Like, they don't win anything. B, he was considered such a big project that he fell all the way from first to fifth in the draft. I really wanted my Lions to take him. To happening at second. Oh well. The talent's definitely there, but there were a lot of concerns coming out that Kayvon Thibodeau just doesn't love football. There was a couple of interviews that he did that were like, do you actually really care? So I think this is spicy in that like a lot of people think that it's going to be an Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions. It's going to be the first overall pick, Trayvon Walker. Like there's a bunch of other guys that are in more prime position that are more win now, ready made players, whereas Kayvon Thibodeau is more long term. I think he leads the league and or leads not leads the league. God, that'd be crazy. I think he leads all rookies in sacks and ends up winning Defensive Rookie of the Year for a pretty bad Giants team.
Okay, so I think what this ends up going into is maybe not a hot take, but there could be a new segment that's lukewarm, brought to you by Luke Mack. So this is like a lukewarm take to me because anyone that's a top 5 pick as a defensive player, I think is automatically kind of in the running as Defensive Rookie of the Year. And then to your point, I don't know any good defensive players on the Giants. So it's like, if he's just sacking the quarterback, he's in a huge market, so he's going to get a ton of love. And like, he's fighting with no one else in that Giants team to look really good, to where it's like if he just lets his talent shine through, he could have a very direct path to Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm putting this in the lukewarm takes. I don't know if it's quite spicy enough.
Yeah, I'm in the line. Like I gotta come up with like 30-40 bucks to slip to the bouncer. But
yeah, you still need to pay cover charge. You're not the hot chicks walking in into the club. No fees or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not getting bottle service. But okay, that's fair.
Exactly.
That's fair. Hit me with your last take. This one might be the spiciest of them all.
So I wanted to throw in a tight end take here, but we're going to be a prisoner of the moment, even though you said first episode we're not going to do that. But Kyle Rudolph, who is an absolute touchdown machine, Rudolph the red zone reindeer, I believe is what the Minnesota Vikings fans used to call him, goes to Tampa Bay where Tom loves throwing to tight ends in the red zone. I could see, and there's an avenue for him becoming a top 10 tight end purely on red zone targets. And I think, it might start off slow, kind of like Gronk's first season there, but he builds a rapport with Tom, and I can see this guy just almost being like Mike Evans is doubled. Cool, Kyle's over on the other side, faded up to him. He has like a cornerback 3 on him, and just wins, dominates dudes physically, and just like 3 catches, 2 touchdowns, 50-yard type performances for Kyle Rudolph. And there's enough to where like that can sneak you into a top 10 tight end, and I could see an avenue for that for him.
See, the more I think about this one, it's less spicy just because like we talked about earlier in the episode, like getting to top 10 status is a pretty low bar. Like you could end up being a pretty average quarterback, and just because you got like 8 touchdowns, you can end up getting into that top 10. I think it's spicy just because of the age factor. He's now another team removed from his Minnesota heyday. He was with I think the Giants last year, if I remember correctly. And yeah, because he's just so old, he's definitely like over the cliff at this point. He's played a lot of snaps, had some injuries in his past. This might be the spiciest take on this entire thing, and you're definitely at the club. You definitely hit 4 for 5 into the club, but
nice.
It's more now a matter of are any of these actually going to hit? So we'll have to go back on these.
So, quick question though: if Kyle Rudolph drops a rap the way like Greg Olsen did, does that immediately make him a top tight end? If he just starts spitting bars with like the Miami University football team, would he be a top?
Oh, I think absolutely. Like he'll be up there with the legends like Jay-Z and Kanye. Like you might as well just throw him into
should
the
every tight end. Should every tight end start their NFL career with a rap? I feel like that could really boost their draft stock.
Yeah, why not? Like that's just free real estate. That's just like helping you get your salary up. So yeah,
I'm glad to hear we're on the same page.
We're all about that content machine. It goes burr at all times.
That's right.
My last.
All right, hit me with your last take, man.
This might be my favorite take in terms of it's not lukewarm, it's not ultra spicy, it's not Jaguars winning the AFC South spicy. It's like right on that perfect level of spice. Like it's like that 3 or 4 level whenever you're going to a restaurant that's not just white people food. It is Bradley Chubb winning the Defensive Player of the Year award. So a lot of people were really excited about Bradley Chubb in his rookie season. He had 12 sacks for the Denver Broncos as an edge rusher. He was a pretty high draft pick. but he kind of fell off after that. He had an ACL tear in his sophomore season, caused him to miss like 12-ish games. Last year, he went on the IR really early on. He had an ankle injury and ended up finishing the season with 0 sacks. I think this year could end up being the year he absolutely transforms into a TJ Watt level, JJ Watt level, Von Miller level type of edge rusher. The talent's definitely there. He's hit 12 sacks in the season and then 7.5 in his last fairly healthy season. I think he puts it all together this year. He has a very good coaching staff in Denver now. He's got an offense that can take some pressure off of their defense in a lot of ways as well. And I think they have good enough corners as well to be able to contain the wide receivers, the opposing wide receivers, and allow Bradley Chubb to have time to get to the quarterback. So going from 0 sacks to probably what I'm projecting as a 20-ish sack season, I think is super spicy. The talent level's there, but like if you look at like defensive player of the year odds, he's like plus like 5,000 or something absolutely insane. So he will be my bet for a dark horse defense player of the year winner.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I'm kind of upset with you because I was about to say this is like when you go to a Thai place and you pick maybe 2 or 3 on the spice level, and it's like you're sweating, but you still enjoy the food. Like it's like the right level. It's pretty good. I think, and it could have easily you've been like, oh, this is oh my goodness, it's Chase.
Chase?
For the Washington football team.
Oh, Chase Young. Chase Young kids.
Chase Young, thank you. Okay, sorry. So it's like if you put Chase Young, it's like, well, yeah, he had an awesome season and got hurt. Like this, like clearly he has a path to being really good. And that defensive line is just, terrifying to go against. Like Bradley Chubb, yeah, he had an awesome season when he had Von Miller on the other side, and now he doesn't have that. So it's like he's the pass rusher for the Broncos. And if he pops off, like that's huge. That's that's a good take right there. I like it.
Yeah, I think it could be a really fun season in Denver. So Bradley Chubb,
it's a team I'm going to watch a lot of games. They always seem to be playing at 3:00, so it's easy to catch their games. Like I could see myself watching quite a few.
Yeah, they definitely fall into that like West Coast bias where it's like no one really cares because they're not like the East Coast big markets in the NFC East or anything like that. But they're going to be a fun team. Like I think they're going to be running into some hard opponents this year and having some pretty high scoring games. So Bradley Chubb, Defensive Player of the Year. So thank you so much for everyone for listening this week. Another fun episode. Honestly, this is one of my favorites, even though tight end is such a dog water position.
Man, dude, tight ends are so few. It's like you gotta really dig deep to build up some content here. So I'm glad we could fight through it.
It's truly a wasteland. So kudos to everyone who listened to us talk about Trey McBride, people that you've never heard before. But those are the guys that can win you leagues. Like they're late in the draft and you got to take some swings. So I want to do a quick plug. Please follow us on social media. It's pretty much in all of our podcast episodes. There's a little plug for our Twitter, our Instagram, our TikTok, our YouTube. We're finally getting the videos put up. Under all of those platforms, we're at Mac_N_D_. For whatever reason, at Mac and D was taken, so we have the underscores in between to separate. So we have our link trees. It's really easy to access. It helps us out a lot. So if you could go on your social media channels, I even got James Dutton on social media, which if you know James, like that's an accomplishment in and of itself. So if he can follow it, so can you. So please give us a shout out on there. It'd be much appreciated.
Yeah, and if you're one of the first people to send us a mailbag, question, you will get a huge shout out. So whoever wants to be the first person to do it, it's almost like a competition in it of itself.
Yeah,
so
it's
reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
You get a shout out. You basically are automatically get your question answered as long as it's like appropriate and somewhat relevant. So
even if not appropriate, I might answer it anyway.
I'll have to get done a few drinks in to make that happen. So thank you all so much for listening this week, and we'll see you later this week.